Hey guys, Luck here. Today I'm going to show you how to change brakes and rotors on a 2012 Toyota Camry. We're going to start with removing the wheel. So before you jack the car up, you want to loosen up the lug nuts so the wheel doesn't rotate. As you see, these are frozen under pretty good. As long as they move, you can loosen them completely later. You can use the air tool, but I want to show you guys how to do this with everything that you would have in your own car without getting special tools. And be careful when you do this, you don't want to eventually slip and hit your shin. It can happen. The way to do it will be just put a little pressure like this. Yeah, we should be good now. We can jack the car up. I'm not going to use the car jack because that thing takes forever. So I'm going to put this little guy here for some extra safety, just in case the jack fails. And now we can remove the wheel. Give you guys a breakdown. This is our rotor, this is the caliper housing, this is the brake pads in here, and we're going to be taking this apart to get to the pads, which will let us take out the rotor. So what are you going to need? New rotor, some brake pads, ceramic is the way to go, gloves, a bungee which I'll show you what it's for later, brake lubricant grease to grease up any moving parts so you don't get that squeaking noise, flathead screwdriver, possibly a hammer to loosen up the rotor, metal brush to get any rust off. You're going to need a 14 and an 18 millimeter socket to get the caliper housing off, and some brake cleaner to clean off the grease of the rotor, which is really important because they're shipped with grease on it to protect them from rust. So you want to clean them up with this before installing, and then some paper towels to wipe it up with. So what we're going to do is now rotate this to get easier access to the caliper. Alright, so we got the assembly rotated so you can better see what we got back here. First we're going to remove these two bolts which move the caliper assembly back and forth to compress the brake pads. On this end we have a piston in the end that compresses the inner brake pad. So what we're going to do, actually, since I'm replacing both rotors and brakes, is get that piston pushed back now in a little more primitive way instead of using the caliper compression tool. So all you need is a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. You want to get in between the brake pad and the caliper, give it a couple taps, and now all I'm doing is pushing this back to me so I can compress the piston assembly inside all the way back, because when you put the new pads in, you're going to need that space for them to fit. That should be enough. Now we're going to loosen up these bolts right here, and this is the 14 millimeter, not 13 socket. So as you see, this is rotating here, so what we're going to need is a 17 millimeter wrench just to hold this bolt on this end, and now we can loosen it up. Before I completely remove this, I'm going to do the same with the bottom. That should come right out. Now this assembly should come right off. Grab a screwdriver to wedge it out a little bit. This is the piston we just pushed back. we're going to clean this up before reassembly, grease it up so there is grease between the brake pad and the piston. Now we're going to grab our bungee. We're going to use it to hang this guy up. So this hose right here doesn't have pressure on it. You want to make sure that doesn't get damaged. Now we're going to go to the back and we're going to remove the two 18 millimeter bolts. If these are stubborn, you can use a hammer or a breaker bar to loosen up. I'm going to use an extension on the other one. Before I remove them, I want to take the pads out just so they're not. Actually, pads will probably stay. Alright, let's see if we can just take this whole thing out with the pads. I bet it makes a difference, but so here's the old brake pads. Save these little spring clips if you didn't get new ones with your set. So these were pretty worn out. Still had some life in them, but time to replace. We're gonna remove these clips before reassembly as well, so we can clean it and grease it all up. But for now, let's take off the rotor. So at this point, rotor should be just loose. Sometimes you guys can see there's thread here. Means some cars have a bolt here that holds the rotor in. If you do, you're gonna have to unscrew that. In this case, we don't have one. So since the rotor is pretty stuck under, we're gonna give it a couple taps with a hammer. Actually, just one did it. And that's it. I'm gonna grab your metal brush, clean off any excess rust. Now we can start the assembly of the new rotor and brake pads. So we're gonna get our brake cleaner and clean up the new rotors from all the oil. Give it a good spray. Wipe it down with a paper towel. Same thing with the inside. Some people use dishwashing detergent and soap, stuff like that to clean it. That's a little more messy if you gotta bring it home, so brake cleaner is a great choice to do so. Make sure you don't get your greasy hands on the surface of the rotors at this point. You want it to be as clean as possible. We're gonna slide this back on. It's a little loose, it's fine, because once we reassemble everything will still tight. So now we're gonna pop these clips off. There's just little taps here. No special magic to remove these. Sometimes you get a brand new brake pads kit. They come with the clips, so use the new ones. In this case, we're gonna reuse them. They still got some life in them. I'm gonna grab my brush, clean this up a little bit. Grab our grease. So you want to grease any connection points between the clips and the pads. This will help eliminate any vibration that you normally hear in cars. Usually that's the reason, because this step was missed. You don't have to go a lot, but just make sure all the connection parts are covered. Get a little copper brush here and just clean these guys up a little bit. clips a little bit. That's the main contact point for the pads. Before you put this back on, you can actually check if these are clean. We can grease these up a little bit as well. That's also moving part. So as you see, there is grease in there. I'm just gonna grease off the top. They just snap back in like that. You don't need a lot, just to make sure everything is lubricated. So we're gonna get the clips back on. You wanna make sure that this piece is facing outwards, not inwards. So this will be the wrong way. So grab the other clip and make sure it's going outside, because as the rotor is in here. All four should be going outside, not inside. Now we're just going to reassemble. You have a torque wrench. You can use a torque wrench to torque to the specific car specific specs, which I don't, so I'm just going to do this by hand, and just enough. Usually it's about 30-40 pounds of pressure or so, but that's just me guessing. So the first part is reassembled. Now we can install the brake pads. You want to also put grease on any moving portions of them, as that will be in contact. So we'll do the same thing. Cover this back surface here. These little corners right here. Just don't get any on the pad itself, as that comes in contact with the rotor. And we're going to slide them in right into the clips here. That's one. Cover the back of the other one. That's going to come in contact with the inner piston. Get the little corners. I'm going to go back here. Should just slide right in. We're going to get these pins. Just like they were before, there's little holes on the pads here. Get that in there. Bottom one. That assembly's done. Now we're gonna get the caliper housing down here. Let's clean off any excess dust in here. It's actually pretty clean. I'm gonna put a little grease on that as well. Now we just reassemble, slide it right back over the pads. Little bolts. One on top. One on bottom. Get a 70mm wrench, a 14mm socket. Tighten it up. I believe normally it's 20-30 pounds of pressure in this case. I don't have a torque wrench, so I'm gonna do it by hand again. Bottom. Now we're going to rotate this back. Brand new rotor, brand new brake pads, everything looks good. We can put the wheel back on and finish up. Forgot about this guy right here. I put this on before just so the rotor doesn't move when we install the pads. So remember, you take this off. Same with the wheels. If you have a torque wrench, use a torque wrench. I believe for the wheels it's about 90 pounds. On average sedans, pickups and SUVs will be higher. We're just gonna do it by feel until we have a torque wrench. So we're gonna fully tighten it once the wheel is on the ground. Remove the safety jack, lower the car. Now we can tighten it. You can literally put your knee against your hand. That should do it. You can use your foot, just don't slip. Get the beautiful hubcap back on. Just make sure you line up this hole with the valve here, and then with the nuts here. That is if you have hubcaps. And that's it, guys. Just did your rotors and brakes on a 2012 Toyota Camry. I believe it's 2012, 13, 14, 15. But honestly, it's going to be similar for almost any car out there. Toyotas, Hondas, Dodge, and so on. Some cars don't have those little wire clips that this car had. Some have the little bolt in the rotor, but the idea is the same. So hopefully that's helpful. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe. I have a lot more videos coming. I'm going to be doing a lot of other things to this car and other cars, as well as some other interesting things, not only car stuff. So appreciate you watching, and thank you.